Check this out, guys. I want to share something with you. Let me know what you think. I got a certified letter yesterday, and it had a pretty large check inside and a letter. And this check was almost as big as the checks that I get from Big Pharma to keep this channel going. The check was signed by Captain Dave. The letter said, "There's a lot more where this came from. If you will please stop telling people I am only 5'1". Hopefully we can make a deal. Much love, Captain Dave." I'm not sure who Captain Dave is. We're gonna have to check this out before I cash this check. So in the meantime, we'll stick with our normal sponsor, and that is me. If you want to buy or sell a home anywhere in the Tampa Bay area and you would like to work with me, message me at aaron@dreamrealty.com. Okay, so today's video is gonna be, I wanna share with you guys a compilation of what judges have had to say on the subject of Scientology. Some of these are from Australia, some of these are from the UK, some of these are from United States federal courts and appellate courts. This is some really incredible stuff and really damning for Scientology. And I can promise you that Scientologists have no idea that federal courts around the world have made statements such as these with regards to Scientology. So I figured it would be helpful to share the information. So here's what judges say about Scientology. This is Justice Anderson, Supreme Court of Victoria, Australia. The judge says, quote, "Scientology is evil. Its techniques are evil. Its practice is a serious threat to the community medically, morally, and socially. And its adherents are sadly deluded and often mentally ill. Scientology is the world's largest organization of unqualified persons engaged in the practice of dangerous techniques which masquerade as mental therapy." Holy shit. This next one is Kenneth Robinson, from Kenneth Robinson, British Minister of Health. "The government is satisfied that Scientology is socially harmful. It alienates members of families from each other and attributes squalid and disgraceful motives to all who oppose it. Its authoritarian principles and practice are a potential menace to the personality and well-being of those so deluded as to become followers. Above all, its methods can be a serious danger to the health of those who submit to them. There is no power under existing law to prohibit the practice of Scientology, but the government has concluded that it is so objectionable that it would be right to take all steps within its power to curb its growth." Unbelievable. Okay, this next one is from a federal prosecutor's memorandum to the judge urging stiff jail sentences for 9 top Scientology leaders who had pled guilty to criminal charges. This was with regards to what Scientology calls Operation Snow White, where Scientology conducted the largest ever infiltration of the federal government in history. 11 Scientologists, I believe, went to jail. It says 9 here, so I'm wondering, meaning it says that this case was for 9 Scientologists. I wonder if the other 2 cases were tried separately. One of the people who went to prison was L. Ron Hubbard's wife, Mary Sue Hubbard. LRH was all too willing to throw his wife under the bus and take the heat for what he himself had done. That tells you just about all you need to know about L. Ron Hubbard. Anyway, the statement is, "The crime committed by these defendants is of a breadth and scope previously unheard of. No building, office, desk, or file was safe from their snooping and prying. No individual or organization was free from their despicable, conspiratorial minds. The tools of their trade were miniature transmitters, lockpicks, secret codes, forged credentials, and any other device they found necessary to carry out their conspiratorial schemes." So the Guardian's Office is the name of the Scientology entity that conducted, conducted this infiltration of the federal government. The Guardian's Office was reorganized within Scientology as the Office of Special Affairs, or called in Scientology, they call it OSA. OSA still exists to this day. OSA is still involved in having people followed, harassing people, except they're a little smarter about it these days. They hire lawyers who hire private investigators, who in turn hire other people, so that Scientology has plausible deniability on any of its fair game tactics. All right, the next quote comes from Justice Leahy, ruling in the High Court of London. "Scientology is both immoral and socially obnoxious. It is corrupt, sinister, and dangerous. It is corrupt because it is based on lies and deceit and has as its real objective money and power from Mr. Hubbard. It is sinister because it indulges in infamous practices both to its adherents, who do not toe the line unquestioningly, and to those who criticize it or oppose it. It is dangerous because it is out to capture people and to indoctrinate and brainwash them, so they become the unquestioning captives and tools of the cult, withdrawn from ordinary thought, living, and relationships with others. Wow. Okay, Judge Breckenridge, Los Angeles Superior Court, says, the court record is replete with evidence that Scientology is nothing in reality but a vast enterprise to extract the maximum amount of money from its adepts by pseudoscientific theories, and to exercise a kind of blackmail against persons who do not wish to continue with their sect. The organization clearly is schizophrenic and paranoid, and this bizarre combination seems to be a reflection of its founder, L. Ron Hubbard. Yikes. Okay, this next one is also from LA Superior Court Judge Paul Breckenridge. This is from June 1984 in the Jerry Armstrong case. Quote, in addition to violating and abusing its own members' civil rights, the organization over the years with its fair game doctrine has harassed and abused those persons not in the church whom it perceives as enemies. All right, well, that seems more of just a statement of fact as opposed to an opinion. This next one is a quote from a California appellate court. It doesn't have the judge's name. In January 1980, fearing a raid by law enforcement agencies, Hubbard's representatives ordered the shredding of all documents showing that Hubbard controlled Scientology organizations, finances, personnel, or the property at Gilman Hot Springs. In a 2-week period, approximately 1 million pages were shredded pursuant to this order. Okay. The next one, California Supreme Court, United States versus Lee, 1982. Quote, when a person is subjected to coercive persuasion, as in Scientology, without his knowledge or consent, he may develop serious and sometimes irreversible physical and psychiatric disorders, up to and including schizophrenia, self-mutilation, and suicide. All right, again, just kind of a statement of maybe that's an expert statement in the case or something. This next one is incredible. This is from the California Appellate Court, 2nd District, Wallersheim versus Church of Scientology of California. The case is from 1986. Substantial evidence supports the conclusion Scientology leaders made the deliberate decision to ruin Wallersheim economically and possibly psychologically. We do not mean to suggest Scientology's retributive program represented a full-scale modern-day Inquisition. Nevertheless, there are some parallels in purpose and effect. Fair game, like the Inquisition, targeted heretics. Other testimony established Scientology is a hierarchical organization which exhibits near-paranoid attitudes towards certain institutions and individuals, in particular the government, mental health professions, disaffected members, and others who criticize the organization or its leadership. During trial, Wallersheim's experts testified Scientology's auditing and disconnect practices constituted brainwashing and thought reform, akin to what the Chinese and North Koreans practiced on American prisoners of war. Using its position as religious leader, the church and its agents coerced Wallersheim into continuing auditing even though his sanity was repeatedly threatened by this practice. Thus, there is adequate proof the religious practice in this instance caused real harm to the individual, and the appellant's outrageous conduct caused that harm. Church practices conducted in a coercive environment are not qualified to be voluntary religious practices entitled to First Amendment religious freedom guarantees. We hold that the state has a compelling interest in allowing its citizens to recover for serious emotional injuries they suffer through religious practices they are coerced into accepting. Such conduct is too outrageous to be protected under the Constitution and too unworthy to be privileged under the law of torts. Now, this excerpt, this statement comes from a case. This was a case that had the potential to bankrupt and shut down the Church of Scientology. And the story that Scientology tells its members is that the judge handed down a verdict in this case for, upwards of tens of millions of dollars. And the story that they tell is that Scientologists rallied around and protested and demonstrated and created what is now known as the IAS, the International Association of Scientologists. And that the IAS essentially serves as Scientology's legal war chest. But the story includes the fact that so many Scientologists gathered around in Portland and protested outside the courthouse for so long that the court reversed its verdict and Scientology was saved. At least that is the version of the story that's told to Scientologists. But check out this news article in the Washington Post from 2002 about the Larry Wallersheim case against Scientology. Headline, ex-Scientologist collects $8.7 million in 22-year-old case. Nearly 22 years ago, Lawrence Wallersheim, a disaffected member of the Church of Scientology, filed a lawsuit in Los Angeles accusing the church of mental abuse that pushed him to the brink of suicide. Teams of lawyers and various rulings came and went, all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. Judgments against the church hit $30 million and then dropped to $2.5 million. But the Church of Scientology never paid until yesterday, when officials wrote a check for more than $8.6 million to end the case, one of the longest running in California history. I wonder how much of that money went straight to his legal fees for 22 years of legal fees. They stalled it and stalled it and stalled it, said Wallersheim, 53, now of Nevada. He calls his victory a landmark for former members of the church, which is known for heated and protracted legal battles. I'm smiling, he said. It's like being the first plaintiff to get a victory against the cigarette companies. That's a good analogy. Wallersheim, who ran a small photo business, joined Scientology in 1969 and later became a recruiter. He signed a billion-year contract to serve the church, but says that he ended up being punished in a thought reform gulag. That sounds like the RPF. Consigned to the hold of a ship docked off California for 18 hours a day. Because of Scientology practices, quote, Wallersheim's mental condition worsened to the point he actively contemplated suicide, a California appeals court said in 1989. The church's conduct was manifestly outrageous. Wallersheim, who suffered from bipolar disorder, was forbidden to seek mental help under Scientology policies. He quit the church after spending $150,000 on Hubbard's mental health regimes, and by 1980 had filed suit. In 1986, a jury awarded him $5 million in compensatory damages and $25 million to punish the church for what jurors called intentional and negligent infliction of emotional distress. The total was reduced on appeal to $2.5 million, but Scientology officials vowed they would pay not one thin dime for Wallersheim, and members were rallied to chant that slogan at hearings. Church attorney William Drescher yesterday blamed Wallersheim in part for the long delay in resolving the case. From what I understand, Wallersheim didn't make any effort to collect the judgment for 11 years. But attorneys for Wallersheim said the church evaded payment by setting up corporate shells and employing endless hardball legal tactics based on Hubbard policies that aim to ruin ex-members who sue the church. 22 years is extraordinary, as attorney Ford Green said. Oh, I did not know Ford Green was his attorney. Well, maybe he's not. Let's see. As the battle went on, the $2.5 million judgment, upheld in 1994 by the U.S. Supreme Court. See, I didn't know that. Even this whole time, all of this was happening while I was in Scientology. I had no idea that that the church was actually held legally liable, and that the courts had upheld the financial judgment against Scientology. As a Scientologist, I was led to believe that Scientology had actually been victorious in this case. I was also led to believe that Scientology has been victorious in every single case that has ever been brought against it, or that it has ever brought in its history, and it's just blatantly false. Okay, so as the battle went on, the $2.5 million judgment, upheld in 1994 by the U.S. Supreme Court. It's amazing to me that the Supreme Court weighed in on this. I'm so glad that they did. Collected interest at the statutory 10% rate. Oh my God, that's why he got $8 million. Yesterday, as a Los Angeles Superior Court judge was set to begin yet another hearing, the Church of Scientology of California suddenly threw in the towel. At 8:17 a.m., the church deposited $8.674843 million with the court clerk, ending the case. Incredible. Wallersheim said significant amounts of the judgment are owed to people who loaned him money on faith that he would eventually prevail. Yeah, I can only imagine. He must also pay off 8 law firms that worked on contingency over the years. Ugh, unbelievable. But on factnet.org, his website, which stands for Fight Against Coercive Tactics Network, he issued a buoyant statement, gloating, "The cult that vowed it would never pay me one thin dime has now paid over 86 million thin dimes." Well, that really is incredible. And I'll tell you what, we are probably on the verge of getting a whole hell of a lot more amazing quotes from judges. One particular judge is the one overseeing the Danny Masterson case, where Danny Masterson is he's being sued civilly. He's been charged criminally. They are separate cases with separate judges. And one judge in particular, I'll look up her name and I'll put it on the screen here, has very, very obviously done an extensive amount of homework on Scientology. And as of up until now, has not fallen for any of the shenanigans that Scientology has pulled. Now, the case is against Danny Masterson, but Danny is accused of abusing and assaulting and drugging women, and some of these women were Scientologists. And in Scientology, not only is it 100% forbidden to ever report another member to the authorities, no matter what the crime. Doesn't matter if it involves women, children, and as such, Scientology has its dirty fingerprints all over this case, obstructing justice, intimidating witnesses, and it wouldn't even be a surprise if part of Danny's defense in this lawsuit is claiming that he too is a victim of Scientology. And Scientology has already come up many times in this case, and the judge has been very strong on the subject. And when this case comes to trial, which is in not very long, it's either at the end of this year or very early next year, I'll double check and I'll put that on the screen as well. When that case begins and gets in front of a judge and gets in front of a jury, we're going to be seeing some amazing quotes. Scientology should be very, very afraid of the Danny Masterson trial that's coming up. All right, everyone, that's all I have on this for now. Thank you for watching. Thank you to everyone who watches until the very end, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.
Okay, if you want to see my rock and roll songs, click right on this guitar. And if you want to see a different one of my videos, then you could click right inside here. If you have subscribed or not, subscribe right